Absolutely excited for an incredible conversation today. I am Craig Aaron's Martin. Happen to be the wonderful host of this incredible conversation, and I am super excited that we have some incredible folks who are in community and will absolutely blow your socks off. Yes, yes, yes. So, before I count them in, I just want to make sure that if you can place in the chat, like, where are you actually hailing from? So I know we got folks on YouTube, we got folks on LinkedIn, we got folks who are on Facebook. All come in, like, please pour into the chat wherever you are, like, where are you hailing from? What are you excited about in tonight's conversation? And as those things pop up, we are gonna actually have our wonderful panel here also see it and respond in kind. So please make sure you go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and start it the ways that we absolutely do. Welcome to Brave Voices in Education, the podcast where boldness meets brilliance and healing meets hustle. I'm Craig Aaron's Martin, educator, advocate, and curator of courageous conversations. This is the space for those who refuse to shrink. Are you ready for this hot cup of courage, y'all? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick bio for our panelists today, just so you know who is in the space. First, we have Shapley Brooks, who is the executive director of the Massachusetts Commission on LGBTQ Youth. Shapley is a tireless advocate and policy strategist working to improve outcomes for LGBTQIA 2S plus youth across the Commonwealth. And she centers sexuality. She centers intersectionality. Don't blame it on my heart, y'all. Don't blame it on my heart. I'm working to make sure I continue to be perfectly perfect. She also centers safety equity in all of the our commission's efforts to shape statewide policy and systems change. We also have Daniel Alfaro Carmona. He is actually one of the commissioners for the Massachusetts Commission on LGBTQ Youth, and he also represents Massachusetts Coalition for Suicide Prevention. He is a fierce advocate, educator, and youth engagement specialist, and he also represents both of these organizations in very profound ways. Deep expertise in mental health, youth leadership, and culturally responsive prevention work. And so I am absolutely excited to have you both here. We have some other folks who will join us too quite soon. And I want to go ahead and check in with Shapley and Daniel. How is your heart?
Hmm. You go first, Danny.
Oh man, I'm tired, joyful. I think I'm sharing both feelings profoundly, but I'm really excited that being in community, especially for Pride Month, recently being in People's Pride for the People in Boston. I travel from Worcester, where I'm from, and the drive from Worcester to Boston, although long, it was worthwhile being in community, but I I think that says it all. Joyful, but also tired.
Mm,
That's real. I'm good. I think there's a lot going on right now. It's obviously it's Pride Month, same month as Juneteenth. So I'm holding both of those closely, and there's a lot going on in our world. So I think I can echo your sentiments. I have immense joy because joy is something that the world can't take.
mm.
But I also I'm exhausted in many ways, but righteously so.
Yeah. I too carry a level of trying to stay balanced in whatever ways I can. It's been quite the day, but it's also been quite the moment for us, and being in spaces where folks are fighting literally on the street just to be alive. And some folks are suffering in silence because it's really scary to be outside these times. And we have young people as well who are looking at all of this and don't know how to make heads or tails of it. And it feels incredibly challenging to try to explain to them like what is actually happening, how are we help managing this as adults, and then subsequently how do we also have conversations courageously with our young people, uh to reassure them when, even when they watch us, it looks like it's very tough for us as adults to manage the young people as well, who are also challenged by this as well. So thinking about that. I would love to just lean in. I would love for you to give a little bit more texture to who you are, who you serve, like a little bit more of the backdrop to why you decided to be part of this conversation. Especially when we have, you could be doing anything. You could be having dinner. You could be outside playing in the grass. But I'm really curious about sharing a little bit more context with our community, about, yeah, who you are and why today are you wanting to be part of this conversation.
These are always so interesting. I'm always like, you. I'll go first, Daniel. So again, Shapley Brooks. I was excited about joining the conversation mostly because I mean Craig asked. So when Craig asks, I come. It's
So
always a yes for me. But also I think the subject matter of family is one that is a very colorful one for me, especially because I um, I was adopted, and so and was in foster care and all of the things, and so family for me has always been an interesting subject, and so in my healing journey and being a mother myself and creating a new family, even after like divorce and coming out and all of the things, creating this like new queer family has always um, it's been rewarding, and it has been a journey, and so um, happy to be here and happy to share in that with everyone if I can help just a little bit.
hmm.
Mm. I love that response. And my name is Daniel Alfaro, and I'm a youth worker at heart. And I had a wonderful experience when I was a teenager with a social worker who was very kind to me, and with kind of wrestling the fact that I, as a Salvadorian American, but secondly, as a person who was struggling with coming out as being bisexual, was a tough road for me. And I think later on in my years as an educator and going to social work school and being in education, but also being a youth worker in the church, there's a lot of aspects of myself that were messages of kind of like coming at me in terms of like what is masculinity, what does it mean to be a religious person, and just being a human being. So I think I was just really inspired to come here, actually by my own experiences with students, and just being a reflection of joy, of being present and just enjoying life. So I think it was one of the reasons why I was motivated to be here tonight and be in conversation with the two of you.
Daniel,
Mm.
let me just say you are you I always have to, when somebody mentions church, I'm like, I was a PK before I got adopted and then after I was adopted. So the church lives within me. So we can definitely talk about that for sure.
Hmm. So I'm curious about context in regards to families, and so I'm curious whether or not you actually have a chosen family. Are there queer and trans young people who are part of your own context? Like, who are you here on behalf of in regards to you know the young people we see every day?
Well, this is an interesting answer I'll give. So, as a school social worker, I think that um, in my 12 years being a clinician, I've been very honored that a lot of students have come out to me first.
Hmm.
And that's something I've been reflecting a lot about, just because as being male in social work is A, not very common, and B, being a person of color and being Latino. Um, I think that I always think about my students in terms of being a safe person, and for a lot of young people who are queer, school is perhaps one of the many only places they feel comfortable being who they are, and highlighting the importance of that. I think respectfully, even though in my as an adult, I don't see work as being part of family. I know that a lot of students experiences think of school as being my family, my chosen family, and that's something I try to honor a lot with my heart, with giving space to kids. But as a person, I think that, as I mentioned before, I think in Hispanic and Latin culture, it's a lot of things that are very complicated with cultural norms. And my chosen family is my friends and the ones that who love me, inspire me, and motivate me. Um, and even those who I silently are part of my family, even though they don't feel they have a voice to say who they are yet. Perhaps my answer doesn't make sense, but I think I kind of want to highlight a little bit, like sometimes in Latin culture, there's a lot of stigma within men to talk about their feelings and who they are. And I've gone through my own journey to being comfortable with who I am as a man and being comfortable, but also being comfortable with joy to say, this is who I am, this is who I love.
Yeah.
Hmm. I
That
love that.
resonates a great deal with me as well as I think about growing up in New Orleans, being in a city that felt very liberatory, um, depending on where you were. Growing up, I grew up in the Ninth Ward, sometimes some parts of the Seventh, and there was always some calculation into in regards to like how I want to show up from from a male perspective, and whether or not I appear to be more of a alpha male persona, and a lot of masking in order to get through the streets, get through my day, and find myself safe. Even though I recognized I was, also queer. I knew that early on, and I think about all of the messages that I had to go to therapy about in regards to what does it mean to be a man? What are the ways that I need to demonstrate that so that it's digestible and acceptable to my parents, my uncles, my aunts. And I grew up Catholic. And so, there's also that Catholic guilt. But, it's like, what would Jesus do? And I'm like, well, can we just really engage? Like, okay, there's some parts of Jesus' life we never actually unpack. And so I'm just like, why are we hiding off like this whole section of his life that we don't know whether or not, so I know some folks might come from my neck because I'm easing into this, but I'm like, there are realistic, questions I had as a teenager and as a young adult that I was trying to navigate from a Christian perspective, because that was the way I was nurtured. I was nurtured to have these beliefs and, center everything that I knew and understood about my life based on God. And I'm like, well, if God created me and I, happen to like, you know, someone who's tall and, got a mustache, and it's not, one of the nuns, I might be all right. I might be okay. But I really think, for young people today, I'm curious for them, do they feel like the road is a little bit easier for them, or is it just as tough as it was when I found myself in the closet? And so, like, those are some of the things that I wonder. There's more access, there's more information, there's more visibility today, but I don't know whether or not for young people, whether or not their journey and road is much easier than it was when I was a teenager.
I mean, I can like I think that, like my kids are my son is 22 and my daughter is 16. And I do think that like my work with young people as well as like having them in my home, it's been an interesting journey to kind of watch how the world has evolved around um, just love, right? And who we can love and who we're allowed to love, right? What is acceptable. One thing that I found very interesting growing up where I grew up. I mean, nobody thinks that Rhode Island is a hard place to grow up. I mean, but it is because like it's only 45 minutes long. And so that means that you have people fighting over very small plots of land and space, right? And so it's always someone beefing, right? So I grew up on the south side of Providence, and it's interesting because you would have someone from like Lockwood beefing with somebody who's from Oxford, and
Mm.
Oxford Gardens and it's literally down the street, or from Clowntown and they're literally across the street,
Mhm.
Clowntown. It's really interesting. But you know what I when I as a social worker and just dealing with young people who were coming out or going through something or advocating for them, I learned that people were in gangs, right? And the people who recruited them into these gangs or their boys or whatever, like they knew that they were gay, and they were like, and in some cases were trafficking young black males.
Mm.
And so it's like, while that is a really harsh reality, um, it just shows us like how far we've come in terms of like masculinity and what is like acceptable in terms of sexuality, and what is like, it's just an interesting place. But then you have people like, you know, my kids or my son specifically, who is a cis male who is heterosexual. One of his best friends is a trans woman. That is his homie. And I love that, right? Because not only because he grew up with a parent who was like, I wish you would, right?
Mhm.
Like, and taught him better. But I think also just because it was just normal
Mm.
for him and all of his friends. And so I think that is, we've come a long way. We have so much further to go, but we've definitely come a long way.
Mm. If I can add to that, I loved the life experience from where you're from Providence, and it made me think right on the spot. And here in Worcester, there is a Catholic school that's run by the Jesuits that have a pride flag, and they have a flag that says Black Lives Matter. Um, I share that. I think I'm very hopeful that young people now are more open and more receptive, and they're willing to learn. But I think that hate is something that is taught, and I think our young people love profoundly. Fundamentally, that's who they are, and I think that hate is not something that's programmed. That's taught. But to add to that, I think that I, as working in schools, I've been amazed about how much I've learned from my own students and my own perceptions and biases from Hispanic and Latinx students, where perhaps language around people in the trans community in Spanish, and I've learned a lot, and that's something that I'm growing on as a person to learning, just because in Spanish, like the a lot of language is still on the works. But one thing I can say though is that our young people are stronger when they're resilient, and I think that's special.
I
I
agree.
agree. I'm uh I, I'm holding some of the conversations from, I mean, last week we had the wonderful young people who received awards at our you know the Jeff Variety Scholarship Awards, and I think about Javon, who's one of the wonderful loves that we just love on, and just the immense courage that I know Javon has had to display in spaces where it hasn't always been kind. And I also think about some of the adults who have been in the space and been a strong advocate for Javon. And there's other Javons who are in the space. I am curious for the work that you both are doing in this space, especially with um, ensure like doing your part to make sure young people feel safe, seen, secure, affirmed. Um, is there a experience that you've had lately that reminds you of like, this is why I do this work? Has there been an encounter with a parent or caregivers, community partners, or even a young person that has really, like, I guess, so really centered you and said, okay, yes, this is why I keep doing this work in this way?
I would say, I mean, I think it happens quite often for me. Young people who I've worked with like 20 years ago almost now, or they're like friends with me on Facebook, or they'll contact me. And um, yeah, I think one of the things that come to mind while I've been at the commission was our gala last year. And there was a young person. So Daniel, you weren't at our gala last year, right? But we had a ball in the middle of our gala, right? We had so many young people, and we're able to um, pay for their outfits to come, and so that they could feel like they were really a part of the experience. It was really beautiful, beautiful time, right? And a young person came up to me, this young black boy, and he was like, I've never felt so seen in my life. I've never been somewhere where there's a state agency who like does this kind of stuff, who does this. And he was just so excited. And recently I saw him and I didn't know it was him. I just was kind of walking, and he's like, you're Miss from the gala. And I'm just like, oh my God. He's like, I still loved it. When is the next gala? Did you have it? You didn't have it? Did you have, like, it was just, and I'm like, I will make sure you know when it is, baby. We're gonna make sure you are there and you are dressed for the occasion. So I mean, those are the, and I mean, it's really simple, right? A gala, but it is like providing and curating spaces of joy for young people. But not only that, places where they feel seen and where all queer people feel seen, and not just white queer people, right? Making sure this little black boy can say, I could be my whole entire queer, gay, fabulous self, and just and feel accepted and loved and feel a part. And that for me, in this position, because unfortunately, as much as I love working with young people, I don't do it like I used to. You know what I mean? And so, and this position is beautiful to. It's been beautiful to see that. It makes me excited about doing the work that we do.
Mm. I loved hearing that because I'm just thinking about my own students, and I feel this is a perfect time to give a shout out to Brighton High School, because there's a lot of snippets that have come to mind where, most recently, a young person standing up for another student celebrating pride and having their flag, where a peer said something that was very unkind, and just standing up for them about respect and dignity. And I thought it was so a beautiful moment of a peer to peer, young person to young person, and talking about respect. But also at the same time, just thinking about spaces that exist. I know that Jason Wheeler was from Safe Schools. They did a wonderful youth conference in Boston. And thinking about with other spaces that I've been at working with young people and seeing young people be together in community, and just learning from adult mentors, various types of topics. And I think giving space to that, I think is great. And I think that's the work that kind of amazes me to be a part of.
Mhm.
Mm, for sure.
How about our families? What I'm curious about, the pulse that you might feel with, um, what are parents coming to you, to talk about? I know I've gotten some emails, I've gotten some text messages. I've definitely had a lot of conversations with folks like after events and in spaces in the grocery store, parking lot. Um, but I'm also curious, like, how, what is your sense around how families are feeling here in the Commonwealth?
Hmm.
You got that first. I got a doozy.
Mm,
I think at the moment there are a few examples that come to mind. Um, so I work in a school community that serves largely Hispanic, Latino families, and also other populations that are immigrants. And right now, it's been a very troubling time. I think that in other school communities I've been part of, I think about peer support groups for parents, and I think there is a compounding scared for their kids who are queer, and also thinking about like being seeking spaces because they're scared of like what's going on in the country with immigration. And many students who have parents who are supportive, they think about those tangibles, right? And I think that for a lot of my parents, the thing that comes to mind is like I have to worry about my baby because there's this piece of immigration that's happening, and also there's this other piece in terms of discrimination on LGBTQ plus rights across the country. So to answer your question, it's been kind of difficult because there's been a lot of things that's been kind of intertwined. Most of my work has been mostly supportive, which to me sometimes it feels a little defeating that I'm not doing much. But it's been kind of like the way that I've been operating recently.
Mhm. I hate to say that it kind of feels normal to me, and I think because sitting kind of at the intersections that I sit at, and I say this just I mean it's a reality, right? Like this is what is happening in this country now in terms of like immigration and LGBTQ rights being attacked and all that. But I feel that LGBTQ rights have always been attacked, um, and working with young QC BIPOC youth, it's been an interesting um, experience, right? And so what I'm saying is, I've always kind of felt that pressure of like multiple identities being oppressed and being attacked. And I would say right now, what it feels like is almost a rollback in some of the progress. I recently, literally, as of Friday, received an email about a young person in DCF care being denied gender affirming care, and they're asking me to advocate, and they came to me not just as the commission, but they're like, you used to work at this place and there were two young black trans girls that you advocated for, and so that's where they're coming from. Um and while we were able to do great work for those girls, and in that change many things that were happening, change policy that was happening at DCF, to know that this is being done again is disheartening. And no matter where it's coming from, right? Because we're living in a state that, and I'm gonna keep saying this, right, where there is what is being shown is this conscious rebellion, and this feels like, well, has it been performative? Is it conscious rebellion, or are we saying the things to make people feel like feel safe in the moment? And so I think parents, one, are afraid, but I think um, I think a lot of young people are fired up. While they're scared, they're still fired up, right? So
Mm,
you have those dueling emotions that people are dealing with.
mm,
I do agree. I see a more of a ferocity as well for young people, who I'm not going to say are unbothered. I do recognize there's a number of young people who are trying to figure it out, don't know what's safe, may not have folks in their lives to help them to understand and navigate, like, this is what law says and this is how this may show up and manifest. Are people going to disappear you because we're living in this very fast-paced social media world where something that may have been true yesterday may not be true today, based on just how many times you swipe, on social media, especially since that generally is the way young people are finding themselves getting information. um, some of the things that I am definitely wrestling with, as I look at some folks who are very close in my family, who are identifying as non-binary right now, don't want to embrace, a gender identity of just male or female, just kind of want to um, live within the gray for themselves. And help I have to spend time, like, now educating some of our elders on, like, okay, well, this is what they and them mean. And no, I don't always understand why today she was she and yes, and tomorrow she's they. I can't tell you that's in, their body. And we
mm,
work with the pronouns that they're given, from day to day. But I think it's just about, like, let's continue to have conversations. I'm gonna love you in ways that I can. Also, that my intention is never to misgender you or dead name you, but I'm trying to understand these things as we evolve. I know for my parents, I appreciate the fact that my parents have evolved so much over time in regards to, like, pronouns and the uh the care they spend, and, like, even processing something before they say it out loud.
mm,
And I know that that means that they do care, and they not only care about me, but they care about those who are in any part of the ecosystem. And I appreciate the fact that they still come with loving arms, which is not always the case for all of the young people that we may serve or see on a day-to-day basis. um I can tell you that I'll be fully honest. I reached out to some folks, a number of people in my community, a number of folks who were educators who said that they were going to show up and be in space, and have not shown up in these different pockets, whether on social media, um, but are folks who are I'm in community with. And so I know a number of things may happen. It's dinner time, people got kids, all of that. But I also am curious about whether or not it feels like a brave act to show up publicly for queer and trans people today. And so I'm just wondering what might be some of the observances you're having in regards to like some of the educators we have, some of the community partners that we may have, around like your own experience. I know that right now I'm really reeling right now live in my brain of like, but you told me 7 times that you knew that you was gonna be here, and I'm like, I don't see you. So what's good? And I love you. However, I'm just trying to understand, why you didn't show up for this conversation in the ways that I had hoped. So just wonder whether or not y'all have any um thoughts about, whether or not you invited some folks and they did or did not show up. And what message that may or may not send.
Mm.
I would say I am noticing the same thing. I mean, I think it is I think, I'm gonna, a little levity. I always think of, my traits, right? My zodiac traits. And I'm like, my little Scorpio heart, my Scorpio moon heart really feels like skepticism most often with people, right? So I'm just like, I never really expected anyone to really keep their word around equity.
Hmm.
I always believed that we were going to see a repeat, what we saw when President Obama left office and Trump came into office, and things started to like people started to turn a little bit, and then they really turned, this time around. When you threaten people's livelihood, it is interesting how people kind of like straighten up and fly right where you want them to go.
Hmm.
But I think it's about character, and I think it's about, and I, these are probably harsh words, right? But they're I think it's about character. I don't that for me, and the thing about it is, I think you can hold two things to be true at the same time, right? Um, I think some people are reserved and they don't know how to move just yet, and maybe there is some analysis paralysis, right? And they don't want to do the wrong thing. They don't want to go too far and put things in jeopardy for themselves, but they also don't want to say the wrong thing in support, or show up in a space where like they're just really kind of just in this space of analysis.
Hmm.
And then I think for the other side, it's like, it's a reprieve. Like they no longer have to perform. It's
Hmm.
no longer a requirement to perform. But in the state of Massachusetts, it still is. So it is a requirement for you to perform, but not in spaces that aren't mandatory, like spaces like this, right? And so you kind of know who those people are, and I don't think that we should judge them according to what they're doing in this moment, but to watch over time, to see how much they wane, right? And then deal with them according to that.
Mm. Mm.
I don't know if you had any thoughts. Saying you don't have to lead into it. I just curious as an observation. Um,
I
that
don't have, I don't honestly have a comment, but I think that was the words that was so powerful is listening to Chaplay was character,
yeah.
and it made me think a little bit about having the humility in terms when people are asking you for being solidarity, and I think sometimes being in solidarity, true solidarity, requires the person to listen and to also feel what the other person is asking you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And that's tough. That could be tough for a lot of people.
yeah. So you're saying I shouldn't be judgy? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, we saying you shouldn't cut people off today. Cut them off next week when they don't show up again.
Like, are y'all overwhelmed because you walked, you walked or you watched Pride, the whole parade,
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I'm teasing, but not. I'm like I said, I'm still wrestling. But yeah, it's a real thing. So okay, I'll shift gears. I'll shift gears. I'll let it. I'll just let the thing ride. For those who will hear this conversation, whether or not educator, whether or not parent, whether or not young person, if there's anything would want them, if there's a piece of advice and insight that would have them dare a little bit more bravely. Maybe this is the educator who wants to be an ally, wants to show up, but are navigating some complexities of their organization and whether or not they really are inclusive. Or for those parents who are still trying to get it right, trying to figure it out, may not totally understand the journey of their young person, or young people, but they want to do right by them, and they're looking for some insights, or even for young people who might actually hear this conversation and they're like, oh wow, they're talking about chosen family. Look, at I've had to construct my own chosen family. What are the things that you would want them to hold dear, from our conversation today?
I think for me, I think I would want young people to hold that they are the bravest generation that has existed, and in a way where like there are so many things stacked against them. I think about millennials, right? Like we went through it, child. We have been through it. But young people today, they also have social media, and you say one thing wrong or do one thing that people don't like, and that can be blown up. All of your business can be out in the street, and so there's doxing and there's all the things, right? And so I think that they are the bravest to live out loud knowing that that is a risk to them, um, and also to know that like this has been going on for centuries. And I'm not just talking about like the history of two-spirited people or queer people always existing. I'm talking about and spaces where people were afraid to really just be who they wanted to be, or they masked it as like an alter ego. Like when you think of like the Fawns, or you think of like always had these like the multiple identities in which we've always held, and we try to in the past like use them as just like these fun like caricatures, but they're actually standing 10 toes down in who they are, and they're like, this is me at every stage. And I love that about them. And gender bending has always existed, and so they're just doing it out loud, right? They're just more unafraid, unapologetic about who they are. And so I want them to hold that they were braver, and they did it better.
Mm, I agree with that. I'm 33 years old, and I think that one of my struggles as a young person was tolerance versus acceptance. And I think that today and age that young people have a capacity to just break barriers and be who they are. So to any educator and to any young person listening, give space to not tolerate but to fully embrace people for who they are. And just reminding young people is like you are something so special to give to the world, and don't let no one to light that fire that's in you because you have a lot to offer. And for the educators, I think that as a queer person, I was motivated to do GSA work because I had peers to tell me I think you would do a wonderful job, and I was very hesitant to show up to the space at an elementary school. And now those same students I work with them now as at a high school. So I've known them for over 6 years, and we are still together and doing GSA work. And it's amazing that I've learned so much as a queer person myself to be brave and to be in space, because that show gives them um, the context that I can be myself, and there's an image of myself that I can be when I grow up, so I can be a successful, happy person in this world.
Mm.
Can I add? I'll just say this. Like I didn't mention educators. I'll say this. If you take the queer part out and you just think about young people like myself
Mm.
who grew up in a time where, like, I mean, I'm cute now, but I used to fight, child. I used to
What?
fight. Yes, I was out there fighting, child. I was, boop, boop, boop. You know, I was, I
You
was.
gave him hands?
Yes,
Really?
I laid holy and unholy hands, often. But you know, I was out there. I would, you know, I got kicked out of high school, and teachers got me back in, like all kinds of things, right? You know, I was in juvie. Point is, I did a lot of things, right? And I just remember there are times, like in my core memories from elementary school on, like I can remember Miss Schneider and Miss Honeyman, and like I can remember Mr. Healy and Miss Wendy, and like these are the people who really, Mr. Tedeschi, who really like shaped who I was going to become. And it does my heart such pleasure, but also does it for them when I can write them and say, hey, I'm gonna have a TED talk, and I'm inviting you to come to my TED talk, or I'm inviting them to come to see my 8 foot portraits in the Commons as a for Portraits of Pride, or I can, like, this is who you poured into,
Mhm.
and oh my gosh, thank you, right? And
Mm.
so if you know, take the queer part out and just show love,
Mhm.
um oh my God, like who will they become? Who will they become?
Mm.
um I'm so grateful. I am like eternally grateful for the people who showed up for me when I
Mm.
had no one. So yeah.
I'm blown away. I'm blown away just because I I'm grateful to them, because I'm grateful to the folks who poured into both of you, because we get to actually do this incredible work today in real time. You know, it is, we were just talking right before, we started recording about just being able to be live and in person and walk together and, see so many people on the streets who are, present, are angry, maybe fired up, might just love being in community, but being seen as well, right? And that's the powerful thing of just one way of saying, hey, I see you. And I am grateful to be seen. And that is not lost on me. Some of the things that I think about myself as a 10-year-old when I knew I was queer, and I was in Catholic school, and I at that point had not reconciled that the teacher who I had put me out of class months on end, outside of my class, outside, like outside, like I was
Mhm.
on a deck. If you have a deck, a balcony, imagine putting your student, your child, out there for hours. um and I had a lot of time to think and dream, and also wrestle with these identities that were surfacing for me, for being both black and smart, and growing up Catholic, but also queer, and not necessarily having words for it. And then knowing that as I transitioned into middle school, and I knew that I saw this one young man, one um 13, 14-year old, and just was enamored by him. And I was like, what's this thing that is like, all my body's electric? But then the horror of, like, I can't actually, who do I talk to about this, because I'm in an environment that didn't feel loving or welcoming. Not, again, because I'm casting, a dark light on my parents or my family at that time, of just more like people didn't know how to love me in the ways that I needed. And I didn't feel safe enough because the environment told me that me being anything less than a straight man who was going to have multiple women and kids at some point, and the picket fence and the dogs, like that's what I need to do. And I need to be hard. I need to be able to fight. I need to be able to use my, not just my hands, but arms as well. Just do whatever you need to do. But like those demonstrations of this persona, I didn't know that that was going to harm me, because then I leaned into something that was inauthentic to who I am. So
Mhm.
as I think about the young people um, who I had in my classroom, who I taught, who were wrestling with the same ideas and questions as I did at being their fifth grade teacher, but not necessarily always knowing how to lean into it. But there was something about, well, Mr. Martin, I just seem to have this. I don't know what's going on with my, this friend of mine. It's like, huh, what do you mean? Or to the 15, 16-year old who cried late at night in Concord, Massachusetts, while we were in a program, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and he's like, I can't go home because my father is going to beat me. Like, I know that if I say this, he's going to beat me, and where will I stay? And I'm a 21, 22-year old. Like, now I'm starting to become an educator and having to wrestle with, like, well, at 22, I don't know. I can't bring you back home to New Orleans, baby. I don't know what to do and where is help. I'm grateful that he is doing well today. He's really doing well in his life, but it is never lost on me about that.
Mm.
And then I think about the educators who, in places of quiet, over drinks, let things slip. A he versus a she versus a he. It's like, oh, you know, and I would say feeling comfortable with leaning in a little bit, but then rolling right on back. It's like, okay, is he judging me? And it's like, not at all, right? And so wrestling with all those things, I would say to folks who might be really pressing and trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I do? Um, I know that in a recent post I talked about chosen family is very important to me. The folks who were in the tough patches when I could talk to them about some of these things, as well as my own shortcomings. I appreciate the fact that I have people in my life who I chose to be my brothers and sisters on this journey and love me through some of the toughest parts of my life so I could be who I am. I also think about how many educators who I stand with in regards to just how do we create these kinds of communities that feel brave enough for young people and brave enough for them to take a stand and be like, put your human rights campaign tumbler on the desk, or have up flags at, or care bears, whatever it is, that if you're in a deep red environment, that you can actually do things to rebel against this foolishness, because there's a human who is always looking to you, labels or not, who needs you. Last thing I will say is actually from one of my favorite shows, Pose. And I appreciated that Pose presented so much more context for us to look at lives that are across the binary in such a beautiful way. And Blanca Evangelista. So if y'all are like, look, check out Ryan Murphy Pose, great show. Blanca says, you have to shine so bright that others can't help but to see you. And
Mhm.
I want folks to hold on to that, because that is absolutely necessary in today's time. I appreciate you both for sitting with me in conversation. And um, is there any last closing words, anything you would want folks to hold on to in regards to, here's a resource, here's something that will keep their vibe right as they keep moving on?
I would say that you know, I'm always going to give people a charge. Like, you want to be on the right side of history. This moment isn't going to last forever. Um, and the hate and the vitriol, like, this is temporary. Love wins always. And so you want to make sure that you're on the right side of history. You want to make sure that you're doing things to set yourself up to for young people to say that I remember this person when, and not to be like, some of the teachers that I didn't name,
Mm-hmm.
that I could have named, or the other administrators at URI that I stood in front of boldly, right? Who made comments because I was pregnant and in college. Like, you want to be different, and so I would say to be encouraged on your journey, but also there's always going to be people around you that that will encourage you either way. And it's important to stand firm in who you are, but you have to know who you are first. And so if you can't look yourself in the mirror and know who you are before you start to advocate for someone else, then you might want to sit back and do that shadow work. um, but yeah, I think that's what I'll lead with.
I'm recalling a conversation I had with someone years ago that said, "All you have is your name," and be honor that of who what you stand for and what you choose to champion. And I think that my calling right now and why I got connected with the commissioner because I feel like this is like the call I want to work on specifically. And I think other people are doing other works that is just equally as important as well. But I think it's just honor that you have your name and stand up for who you are, for your values, and I think that's profound and very important.
For sure.
If folks want to be in your ecosystem in any way, how would how would you invite them to connect with you if they want to learn more, lean in more, um, maybe seek you for some type of support or insight?
As for me, you can always find me on the commission's website. Just look up Mass Commission on LGBTQ youth, and you will find me. I'm also on Instagram and the ticketies of the talks. It's probably acting a fool on TikTok. Don't believe anything you really see there, except for all the advocacy stuff, because
Mm,
sometimes I like to act up. That's where I act a fool on TikTok.
mm.
But you can also see me. You can also find me in the field doing the work. If you want to have a real conversation with me, meet me when I'm working,
Hey.
and let me see you working too.
Mm.
The life for me is in Worcester, but my job is in Boston.
Mm.
So I'm in both places, both times. So I live my whole social life in Worcester, but I can be found on LinkedIn, Daniel Alfaro, and I'm happy to connect with anyone.
Sounds good.
That's beautiful. LinkedIn, I never checked professional Facebook. It's so bad. Sorry, y'all.
It's all good. It's all good. I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much for braving this with me. I don't think that people are aware that there are folks who are not necessarily always ready to get on a camera and speak, their journey. And I appreciate you both for daring bravely into this thing. You didn't have to.
Always for you.
Oh, you're too kind. So folks, that's a wrap for this episode of Brave Voices in Education. If something stirred in you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with your village, your team, your brave ones. Come be a part of the movement at bravevoicespod.com, where healing meets hustle and testimony turns into transformation. This podcast is more than a show. It's fuel for the Black Boy Joy Summit, a celebration of brilliance, belonging, and black and brown boyhood that refuses to shrink. Like what you heard, like, subscribe, and follow us on your platforms. Leave a review, share with your circle, because every listen, every share, and every shout out helps us build classrooms, communities, and futures that are braver and more beautiful than before. Until next time, generate your own joy, never go it alone, get free, and always love your brave. Y'all take care.